This is one of the most fun episodes I've done ever. And actually, there's not a lot of laughter in it, but it's just fascinating. It was such a dense experience to record this. So Alex Voigt has been on the show before. He is an extraordinary, I suppose, well, he's an engineer who studied factory design. And then has gone on to be a kind of journalist talking about the automotive industry. And he's upset a huge amount of people because he's very critical of the German automotive industry and very pro-Tesla. And that really upsets some people. Obviously not Tesla fanatics, but anyone else. And but I think what he's saying is really important. I mean, the reason he's saying this is because he's very concerned about the future of the German auto industry, because it's under an enormous a lot of threats, not just from Tesla, but from China, from Korea, from other car companies around the world. I mean, Germany has been on the top of the car industry for so long, and I think there's a lot of concern that is going to be, that their time is waning. I mean, and it employs huge numbers of people, and it's the absolute backbone of the German economy, so it's very central to what they do. Okay, well, let's get on with the show. Really want you to enjoy this. I really hope you do. It's quite long, but I don't want to cut any of it because Alex is a genius and it's all brilliant. Do subscribe, though, to the Fully Charged. And more important than subscribe, do tell your mates about it. Tell them, I listen to the Fully Charged Plus podcast. Have a listen. It's really interesting. I have all sorts of different people on. And it's not always the boring old bloke that does them, because Helen's going to do there's going to be other presenters that do the show, and we're going to do more like group conversation episodes where more people are involved. So before we start, though, with Alex Voigt on this wonderful, gorgeous episode of the Fully Charged Plus podcast, let's have a quick message from our wonderful sponsors who make this show possible. My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. No, Alex, it's always a pleasure. I've been really, like today is a highlight of my week. It's really exciting. Well, because I just love the in a sense, it allows me to be a moderate centrist, to have your, slightly more extreme views. Okay. And I basically agree with everything you say, but I'm always worried. I'm a classic guilt-ridden centrist liberal. I don't want to upset the people I absolutely disagree with.
Yeah. Well, I enjoy the easygoing conversation, and I like your videos for a variety of reasons. And I believe at the end of the day, it's good to share information, particularly here out of Germany right now, because a lot of things are happening. And you probably also heard that these days Elon Musk is in Berlin, so there's a lot going on there too. A lot of new information leaking out, which is interesting. The reaction from the automotive industry is interesting in that respect. So. Yeah, a lot of things are going on, and always happy to be on your show.
So Elon Musk is currently in Berlin. Is that where he's around because of the new factory?
So Sunday evening he was flying in, and he informed the politicians that he's just coming for technical discussions on site at Giga Berlin.
Right.
And turned out that was not really the case. At the end of the day, he had, at least until now, 2 meetings with politicians, with 2 ministers separately. Right. One is the Minister of Environment from Brandenburg, not environment, sorry, for economy, Steinbach in Brandenburg. This was a short meeting on site. And the second meeting was with the Transportation Minister Scheuer about Starlink, interestingly. So That's probably, that's a satellites flying around.
Yes, yeah,
broadband to certain remote areas. So consider Germany as a remote area in that respect.
It's very isolated and remote. Germany always has been.
Yes, actually. So it's an interesting topic because there are really a lot of regions in Germany which have really, really bad broadband connection.
Oh, I bet that's the same here. Yeah, I'm sure.
And just imagine you work in your line of business and you don't have fast broadband, you're just dead. You can't do anything.
No, I lived like that for I don't know how many years. We lived here with terrible. It wasn't even broad. You couldn't even call it narrow. There was some mist came out of a wire. That was as good as it ever got. It was hopeless. And now we have very fast, so we're very lucky.
That's a part that's the reality in certain parts of Germany. So that's a problem. And the reason why there is no broadband fast connection is simple. The industry is, of course, looking at profits. So it makes a math. And if there's a region where not a lot of people are around that would pay the fees, the infrastructure is expensive, and although it's supported by the government, they just shy to do that. So we don't have broadband in that area. So the Minister Scheuer was very supportive to Elon to provide this to Germany. Actually, it's already here. I got an offer myself for Starlink, and I didn't do it because I'm living in Munich, so we have fast broadband here.
Right.
My family has a small house at the waterfront at the Baltic Sea, so at that place we don't have broadband at all.
Right.
It's really difficult. So for that environment, that can be very helpful. But why I'm saying that is exactly the same as happening with the charging stations in Germany. You have the same problem. So you don't have fast chargers or even chargers in certain parts of Germany simply because there are not a lot of people with PV around that would pay for it. You don't have a lot of traffic. So you don't have a lot of chargers. People don't buy PVs.
And they don't buy the cars.
So it's chicken and egg, that's the problem.
Yeah. That is, because that is I think we've discussed this before, but that the transition, it does feel like, and I think this is what you've been hammering on about, but it does feel like the German auto industry absolutely at the cutting edge forefront of the most brilliant technology for the last sort of 40 years.
Yeah.
And, and everybody with aspirations to have a cool car, to have a really fast car, to have a reliable, powerful car. You just go, where do you get it from? You get it from Germany. There's not even any, these are the 5-6 brands that you just buy these because they're amazing and brilliant and they've sold all around the world. And that in the last 2 or 3 years has been battered, that reputation. And, they're not, I don't know how, I'm intrigued to find out how well the German auto industry is doing, because I think I have the tendency to live in a bubble that occasionally gets popped when I see the actual figures of car sales around the world. Yeah. And electric cars are a tiny proportion still.
Right.
So they are.
So I think, first of all, I'm living in a bubble myself. So we all do. So it's all good to remember that. But I'm obviously also reading and listening to all other sources I can get hold of. And what I learned is, and you're right, the German automotive industry is now falling behind big time. And I predict here and now that this is going to accelerate. So a lot of people believe, okay, now we have the ID4 and ID3, and, the i4 is coming out from BMW and the EQA from Mercedes. All these brands because you're going to test drive them, I guess, soon. But what is happening is that they all struggle to change their internal organization in a way that they can innovate fast enough. That's probably one of the root causes. So if I look what's happening right now in Giga Berlin, although it's not finished yet, with for instance, this large giga parts. So it's just tremendous innovation. Nobody's even thinking about. Daimler, VW, they don't think about. VW is very proud about the MEB platform, but if we look at the the software and also the technology coming out of that, what is happening with VW is they are trying to use their scale that has been in the past proven to be extremely successful, because if you can produce in scale, you can produce on low cost, and so people will buy the vehicles. But nowadays there are a lot of new aspects coming in, like software, for instance. And Herbert D said in an interview lately, 70 to 80% of let's say the characteristics of a vehicle will be determined by software, and I agree.
Exactly.
I agree to that. So that's he's 100% right.
Yeah.
But if we take a reality check with VW on their software team, on their group, on where they stand and what they produce, they are falling behind big time.
Right.
And there are many reasons for that. And they already talk now about their next platform after MEB.
Right.
With Artemis and Trinity, which are the two projects from VW Group and Audi in terms of providing a next generation battery electric vehicle that can compete with Tesla. And they're trying to bring this out in 2025 and 2026. So we talk about 4 to 5 years from now.
Yeah.
So imagine where Tesla is going to be at that point in time. So, and that's why I'm still pretty emotional and, speaking out loud about, hey, it's all great what these guys are doing. I love VW for going the Me Too approach. It's the right thing. I was preaching this all the time. Now they do it. Great. Fantastic. But I also see that they have a ton of challenges and issues to go there, and I hope they overcome it. With BMW and Daimler, I don't even see a serious approach. They just, they play around. There's a ton of marketing out there. So if you believe all the PR and marketing, you're just lost in translation. And you're right if you say, let's look at registration numbers, for instance, make a reality check, how many are really sold worldwide on a global scale on a longer time frame. And, there's a lot of PR and marketing trying to create impressions that at the end of the day, are not the reality. And I'm concerned in that respect, because most of the effort shouldn't go into PR and marketing. It should go into technology and pace of innovation. And that's what I'm really missing.
Yeah. No, I mean, I saw the other night, and it just really upset me. I was watching regular broadcast TV, and there was an advert on, and but the reason it's so stupid, because I honestly can't remember what the car was, but it was a combustion car, and it was a young man driving through a completely deserted city. There were no other cars anywhere. And he was driving along and people, and he did the thing where he drove down the street and you cut to the person watching the car drive past it with admiration. And you go, it's so stupid. And it so backfires on itself. And whoever has, only in a post-apocalyptic zombie movie does Will Smith drive down a street with no one on it. I mean, it's the most stupid bloody thing. And it was advertising the fact that it had, adaptive cruise control and auto park, which is like, so what? Anybody can do that. That's no big deal anymore.
I agree, and that's a good point. Actually, if you look at the ads, they are all in environments that you never ever either go to, or if you go there, it's completely packed and full and filled. And cities without people is really very odd. It's a
very strange thing to show. Or it's either that, or it's in Germany it would be a beautiful winding road through the Black Forest. We get one through Scotland, where I've driven through Scotland twice in my life. It's beautiful. It is stunning, but there's not many people there.
It is.
Yeah. But I mean, that side of it though is, the car that is the two cars that have impressed me in the last 6 months that aren't Teslas are the Fiat 500e, mainly because of the size of it. Mm-hmm. And I love the size of it. And it was, I've got no idea how adequate it would be long term. I drove it for some hours, it's a very short, normal thing for a car review. A very good friend of mine has just bought one in New York State in America and absolutely has gone bananas. The first electric car they've ever had, they absolutely love it. And it's really simple. I mean, that's what I think is missing. I want a really simple, stripped down, bare minimum car, because our phones can do sat nav and all that. You don't need all that stuff. Make it cheaper and make it simpler. But there was that one that I was blown away with. And at the other end, I have to say the Mercedes EQS, that when I test drove that, I've known nothing about, and it was absolutely absurd. I would never have a car like that. But when you look at the experience and the time and the technology they have at their disposal to make a car interior, they really do it well. I mean, I appreciated it, and I have no real passion or interest about car interiors, but this was stunning. It really was. Now, as a car, it would be, you've just got to be a millionaire to have one. I mean, it's an expensive car, but also it's kind of built for a driver to drive it with a cap on, and you sit in the back with luxury fittings all around you. It's kind of.
So I just jumping in here. I think, first of all, there's going to be a ton of use cases in the world, and you just pounded on this one, for different versions of vehicles, for different use cases, for different people, for different culture, and you name it, different streets, and we can go on with that. So that's why we need variety, and that's why I'm saying, everybody needs to get started. And you and me, we know how many years it took us to come to the point today where we have at least a pipeline of new BEVs coming out this year, which is awesome. Yeah. It's great, fantastic. So, and people will buy them, so that's also great. The issue I have with, or let's put my finger here on the problem with the EQS, is not the EQS itself. It's just the methodology of the German automakers to kind of talk to their existing customers and trying to develop a vehicle that would please them. So they are trying to build something that is fulfilling the expectation from the past in terms of...
Yes, exactly. No, you've got it. That's it.
Interior... I have this feeling I'm sitting in a Mercedes. I mean, and they're putting blind people in there to prove that, right?
Right.
So
right.
The feeling of sitting in an Audi and a VW, and you and me probably can't do that with folded eyes.
Yeah.
Because we get the sound and all of that, and they're trying to replicate this in the new world of BEVs, which is all fine. I have no problem with that. Yeah. The problem I have is they ask their customers from the past about what they would buy in terms of BEV for the future. And that is like, the sentence from Steve Jobs from Apple once said, if I would have asked the customers what they want, they never would have said, they want this or that. We never would be here. So, and that's exactly my issue here, because the strategy the Germans are approaching would work if there would be no alternative, if there would be another option. And the option we have is Tesla. So at the end of the day, it's not only about the feeling, the interior, and the looks and the brand.
Oh, God, yeah.
It's a ton of other things. You know this very well. I'm talking about charging. I'm talking about range. I'm talking about acceleration. I'm talking about driving behavior, blah, blah, blah. A lot of things that I believe are critical and very important. And and you pounded on that with the Fiat. We talk about, affordability. And the EQS is probably going to sell for a very slim number of people who have
tiny number,
and they want to have a green car with no emissions, and that's great, and they like the interior, they will buy it, period. But this won't make this is just not changing anything. All right, this is just a very, very minor group of people. So we need to have mass production of affordable BEVs. And Tesla is way too expensive still, and Elon Musk knows that. And this is what keeps him awake at night, right? So if you look at the efforts from Tesla to drive down the cost curve, they are ahead of everybody. And the reason why they are ahead is because they believe this is just the beginning of the change, while the legacy automakers believing in profits. So for them, it's very, very important to have a vehicle with a high profit, because otherwise shareholders will go away. The market cap is shrinking. They can't finance their company and the future anymore as they want and they need to. And then they are a takeover candidate very, very quickly. So it's that fear. If you ask me about Germany, nobody will tell you that. But that fear is happening, is present right now in the boardrooms.
It must be,
They all talk about, and if you listen carefully to live interviews, and I just analyzed a live interview with Herbert Diess, and I made a video about that I'm going to release soon. You hear him talking about valuation from Tesla and VW all the time. And there's a reason for that. And if you listen to the CEO of BMW and Daimler, same thing. They in their back head, they all the time have the challenge around if we get weak, we are a takeover candidate and we can't sell any more, millions of cars, and that won't work. But what I miss, and that's my critic, I miss that they make the right step in the future in terms of innovation and really making a difference. And this starts, by the way, with changing the internal organization, which Herbert Diess is doing. But there's a lot of restrictions to make it happen, but at least he's starting. I don't see this at all with BMW or Daimler.
Right. Or Audi, even. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Audi, Mr. Duesman, the CEO, actually, I like him. He's a great guy, and he's talking the right talk, and he's also making some changes, which I believe are really critical for the future. So I've pretty positive about the future of Audi in terms of innovation and new vehicles. So let's look where this goes to. The e-tron was an early starter, and they know it was not perfect, but they tried their best. And I know you like the ID3 and ID4 and it's great cars.
Yeah.
But it's the same story. It's just a start, and I hope that they can improve big time based on that.
Yeah. I mean, it is those really simple things, and I know I've discussed on the show and probably discussed with you. But my neighbour has an ID3, she loves it, but she had to take it in and wait to have a software update. And in 2021, she had to drive it. For where we live in quite a remote area, she had to drive about 45 miles to go to a garage for a guy to plug in a laptop and do something to the car. And you just go, that is incredible. That they built a new car in the last year it requires that kind of attention. Why? I mean, my Teslas have been updating over the air without me doing anything for 5 years, at least 6 years, probably.
So I think what's important here is to understand that the implications for over-the-air updates are much bigger than people believe or assume. So it's a much harder nut to crack. And early on, people said, hey, that's not a big deal. We do this already with the infotainment system and blah, blah, blah. And they do actually, partly here and there. BMW is doing this since a while, and Audi is doing it here and there. But it's not a centralized infrastructure they have in the vehicle, so that restricts them. And it's not easily just implemented because it's a ton of different suppliers involved who don't talk to each other. And if they do, it takes a long time to develop something that really works. So you have to have really vertical integration like Tesla is doing to make it happen. Yeah. But I also like to say here, there's another aspect which is really, really extremely important. People don't talk in public a lot about, and the CEOs do, which is data usage and digitalization. So to be in control of the interface to the customer. So these guys are really afraid that in the future, Google, Apple, and the other big tech players are going to take over that part of their business.
Right.
And if that is happening, a large portion of the margin will just go away from their business. And they're going to be just, someone who's developing a chassis with a battery in there and you can drive with it, but it's not really making the big money. The big money is coming from the data usage and, the access to the customer and what you can sell through that interface. So that's a big, big business. So the data are involved here. And I know that the Germans already had talked. They have right now discussions with all the big guys, with Google, with Apple, and you name it, in order to discuss solutions for the future, while Tesla is approaching this a little bit the Apple way in order to own everything around it. And that's the next level challenge that is kind of on top of OTE and software, if you will. So it's a very critical and important for legacy auto to be a part of that. And if they are not, they're gonna shrink in terms of volumes, margin, influence, and everything. And I believe 10, 20 years from now, the ship will really go in that direction. So the problems, let's put it like that, the problems they have are not going to be easier in the future. It's just the beginning of the headache here.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And now, because the other thing you mentioned in emails we've been exchanging is hydrogen, which, I mean, it has come back into my, hydrogen is such a peculiar gas. So I was very aware of hydrogen in 1971, 72 during the oil crisis.
Yeah.
Again, I was a 15-year-old, 16, so I didn't have cars or anything. But I just remember everyone talking about it. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter, this oil nonsense, because in 10 years' time, we'll all be driving hydrogen cars. And I kind of, and I mean, this was my physics teacher at school. It wasn't just sort of a randomer.
Yeah.
And there was, I remember seeing a newsreel at a cinema. So that dates it, if nothing else, about how in future we'll all be driving hydrogen cars and I mean, that was, I don't know how many years ago, 50 years ago. So it hasn't ever happened. And I've in the last sort of 10 years, I've tried to remain open-minded, skeptical, open-minded. If it works, it's better than diesel.
Yeah.
I'd rather cycle behind a hydrogen fuel cell bus, truck, car than a diesel one, any day of the week. But I can't see it. The first hydrogen fuel cell car I drove was in Germany, the Honda Clarity. Beautiful, really lovely car to drive. I burnt up the Autobahn in a hydrogen fuel cell car and then went to a filling station, which I think at the time was the only one in Germany, which was next to a chlorine factory. Now, I can't remember where I was, wherever Honda's headquarters are.
Right.
Can't even remember.
Yeah.
But, and that's where and so it was a byproduct of chlorine manufacturing was hydrogen. They pressurized it, put it in tanks, and you paid a lot of money to fill the tank of that car, on the one hydrogen pump. Right. Where is that infrastructure? There should be tens of thousands of those all around the world. There should be a map of America that looks like the Tesla supercharger map that is the hydrogen map.
Yeah.
It ain't there.
No, it's not, but that's just only a small puzzle piece here. The overall story is, first of all, I was a fan of fuel cells and hydrogen very early on because it's a compelling business case if you look at it, and it makes a ton of sense, and you just don't have emissions, and you can fuel your car quickly, and all of these messages stick with consumers.
Yeah.
Maybe just the engineer in me, when I investigate a little bit more about battery electric vehicles and hydrogen, I came very quickly to the conclusion that in terms of energy sufficiency, it doesn't make any sense.
No.
So the rule of thumb is 1 to 3, kind of. So you need to have 3 times, actually it's 1 to 4, 3 times more energy supply in order to travel the same distance in a hydrogen car compared to a BEV. And on top of that, you just said if you have 3 times more energy you need to put in, you have kind of 3 times more costs around it. Yeah. And this cost, someone needs to pay it. And the companies who want to make money with it will give this sooner or later to the consumer. And so that's one of the reasons why it's very expensive. And it's also the reason why you don't find fueling stations. And I have a couple of other technical issues with hydrogen. First of all, it's the oil and gas industry involved here once again, who are trying to keep their share in the business. So, subsidies, and there's a lot of money flowing in from the federal government here in Germany and other countries. Japan is big in that respect.
There's federal money in Germany to support hydrogen infrastructure, or to support the notion of hydrogen vehicles, right?
Yeah,
wow.
Yes, both.
Okay.
Everything.
Yeah.
So it's a huge campaign going on here, and obviously the old oil and gas industry that I believe will completely change and disappear is fighting for that, because this is kind of their straw they can hold on and hope that they can survive and work like that in the future. But, you just mentioned cycling behind a hydrogen bus or so. I wouldn't feel well, to be honest, not because emissions are okay, although the water is not really water. This is another thing people don't know. There's also pollution in there. But the most important part is this is the driving bomb. I mean, the hydrogen is just the most unstable gas you actually can have. And, you and me, we have seen these explosions from some hydrogen gas stations or cars even. So the technology you have to put in there in order to keep this safe for the driver and the environment and also, if you have supply and all of that, is very, very, technical, highly sophisticated technology in order to make it happen, which makes it very expensive and still very dangerous. Yeah, you can claim, okay, batteries burn, and if they burn badly and they burn long, and that's all true. But you and me, we know very little water can control this easily, and it doesn't explode. So everybody who's saying a battery is exploding, just not telling the truth. So the danger for the people using it it's really minor compared to hydrogen. And I don't feel well, even if I'm on a charging station for my BEV, and there's a hydrogen station just 100 meters or 50 meters. I don't feel really well. As an engineer, I just don't feel well there.
Yeah. I mean, well, if nothing else, there'll be a tank at that. Even if there's no car there, there'll be a tank behind the scenes. There is an unimaginable pressure, because when you realize the pressure, it's only when I compared it to the pressure in a car tire. Yeah. So for me, the way I understand, which is tragically dated, but is about 32, 35 pounds per square inch pressure. Yeah. And a hydrogen fuel cell tank is around about 5,000 pounds per square inch of pressure.
Totally crazy. And even without that pressure, hydrogen is moving through metal. So it's moving through the metal sheet over time. So you can't even control it without a lot of pressure. And is that dangerous or not? Maybe not that dangerous, but it's just. And we all know, leaks are happening all the time, and it will happen in the future, regardless what you do. There's a human error, or sooner or later you're gonna have a leak. And if you have a leak with hydrogen, you have a huge explosion.
You have a problem. I mean, I think the stuff that I've seen about that, I don't think I'd be worried about a hydrogen fuel cell car in a collision, or even with I've seen footage where people fire armor piercing shells at a pressurized hydrogen tank. The shell goes right through, and there's a blue flame that is extremely dangerous if it touches you, because it's incredibly hot, but it doesn't explode. But the thing is, what I haven't seen is a car that's parked with a full hydrogen tank that, because of whatever reason, a riot, is set fire to. Because all cars will burn. There's plenty of combustible material. So if you've got a burning car and you're a firefighter, and there's a burning car, oh my God, it's a hydrogen one, run. You would not want to walk up to it and start squirting it with a hose. You want to keep as far away as you can, because I don't know what would happen then if you're boiling hydrogen at very high temperatures.
And I don't want to pound too much on it, because at the end of the day, it's going to be probably a tenth or even 1% of the fires we have.
Yes, it's very slight.
Very small. Yeah. But I'm more concerned about the technology you have to put in there in order to make it happen, which is going to be highly sophisticated and very expensive. And that money needs to be paid from someone. So you have to ask yourself, if you have 3 times the energy consumption compared to a BEV, who's going to pay that? And nobody will. You will have a few people who say, okay, I want to drive now 1,500 kilometers on one charge, or, on one hydrogen fill. So fine, but this is just a very minor group of people. And the problem I have with it is we need adoption to, low energy consumption very quickly. So we can't afford to wait for whatever technology, and that's true for e-fuels, and this is true also for hybrids, and and of course hydrogen. We can't wait. We can't afford to wait for a technology to mature while we have a technology that works already today. And all what we have to do is to produce it in masses and bring it out to the people, to bring the cost down so that the adoption is increasing. It's all what we need to do. So therefore, I'm saying, let's stop that conversation. It doesn't make any sense. And yesterday, Herbert Diess, the CEO of Volkswagen Group, just tweeted exactly that. He said, let's stop the conversation about, hydrogen. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Oh, that is very good news, because that's often been the case. It's the CEOs of big car companies who go, well, we're developing hydrogen and we see it as a very positive future and all that stuff.
You understand a little bit about physics, and you don't have to have studied it at all. It's just so obvious. There's so many studies out there which are showing the same story again and again and again. Still, people are pushing that like there is no tomorrow. And I think it's going to be billions that are wasted, and we could use
I know.
money for
Yeah,
other things better.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it is also. I mean, it's very hard not to see it as a delaying tactic for big automotive industry and the oil industry. If we can say that, because I mean, there are. I think I always hesitate to draw parallels. Like Tesla are just like Apple, sort of, but they're also incredibly different because you can't compare a laptop with a car. They are different machines. They require different. Apple didn't need to install a high-powered charging infrastructure all around America in order to sell laptops.
Yeah.
That wasn't a problem. But the other one is that the comparisons between, for instance, the tobacco industry and the oil industry. Now, I mean, it is true, and it's proven, there's no doubt about it, that the tobacco industry hired a specific group of lobbyists to simply delay the introduction of restrictions on smoking and smoking bans and secondhand, all those. They argued and fought for years, decades, and they delayed and delayed the inevitable, which they knew was going to come, was that smoking would go out of fashion and be viewed in a different way.
Exactly.
The same people work for the oil industry now, and they know that they're screwed. The oil industry knows it's over, but they will cling on. And that's what I think always upset me, just because of the incredible short-sighted stupidity of that decision. And you'll know this too. I mean, I've met people who work for BP and Shell. Engineers are amazing, really incredibly talented, skilled people working for an industry that is doing anything and lying and cheating and releasing papers that are totally spurious just to delay that. And it's very hard not to see hydrogen as part of that tactic. Oh, well, let's have hydrogen.
It is. I mean, there's actually no doubt about that. I mean, it's very obvious, and I fully agree to your analogy about the cigarette industry. In the 70s, there was a internal study from scientists within, all the big companies there, and they came up to that conclusion. What you just said, it's going to kill people, and it's going to be very risky for our companies in the future because we're going to be responsible sooner or later. And they took that study and put it on the shelf and closed it. So they didn't want to hear that. And the same is happening here. And this is, by the way, coming back to our topic here, my big critic to the legacy automakers. So if you listen to, again, Herbert Diess, he wants to sell another 10 million vehicles in the future. But if you follow him and watch him on LinkedIn or everywhere, you see he's promoting ICE vehicles all the time. Yeah. And they even initiate a lot of very brand new models. So it's not like they just advertise the old ones, which I still would understand because they need to create
got to sell what you've made. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, and it's 97.5% still. They sell vehicles with a combustion engine in there.
Right.
And they bring new cars, and I'm talking about heavy SUVs. ICE.
Yeah.
They build new plants just for ICE in the emerging countries like Brazil, South America, and they want to sell there. India, big time. And they claim, that battery electric vehicles is going to be more something like for the Western world, like North America and Europe. But for the other areas, they will never really have battery electric vehicles. And I don't get that point because think about Africa. They have sun, they have wind. I mean, they don't have a good energy infrastructure at all. So centralized generation and consumption of renewable energies is the right thing to go. And if you do that, then you have immediately your fueling stations at the house. So it's brilliant, easy, and it's cheap, by the way. So it's cheaper than a combustion engine. So this makes me kind of mad. So I'm really negative about them pushing new cars and ICE cars. And yes, they promote BEVs and they develop BEVs, but they don't want to shrink 1 cent. So they want to keep the same size, making the same profits if possible. And I believe that strategy, is very, very dangerous. And, I doubt that we'll succeed with that. So I see them all shrinking. And Daimler already said that. I mean, Kalenius, the CEO, already said we are going to be a smaller company in the future.
Wow. Who actually stated that.
Right? It's a fair statement. And they keep their profitability, which I also understand because their bonuses depend on that.
Yes.
But I understand that it's human. I mean, it's just how they work. That's the incentive system these companies have, right? So that's a big difference again between Tesla and everybody else. The very simple point that Tesla is not about making, a lot of money that they give to shareholders. I mean, the stock is going up and down now again. So, sure. But at the end of the day, and that's very clear, it's about the mission. And you see this happening. This is not just a sentence from Elon Musk. And this is also when the people have been interviewed for Giga Berlin here, in the first meeting, one of the first 3 questions was all the time, why are you interested to work for Tesla? And if you said, well, it's great technology, I think these are the futures, all right. But what you should say is that, that you want to help with a transition and that the world needs to go rid of fossil fuels. And we have to make that change. And that's the right answer. Otherwise, you just don't get to interview number 2.
You don't get a job.
It's true. I mean,
that's amazing, isn't it? That is extraordinary. Because I would love to briefly discuss that because I've sort of followed this. Well, when it first was announced, it was a big thing, and they started building it really fast, and there was sort of discussion about it. But it seems to has it hit a little bit of German bureaucratic difficulty to open the factory to actually start manufacturing? I mean, I've read so many different little reports that it all went through the normal planning procedure, which can be quite slow and cumbersome, and it got through really quickly. But it seems to have kind of finally hit a wall. But is that not the case?
Well, actually not. So
that's good.
Are there delays? Yes, absolutely, which is normal for a construction site of that size. Being from abroad like yourself, people, of course, compare the situation in their country with Germany. And in Germany, it's pretty normal that you have 2, 4, sometimes 5 years application process before.
You would here in the UK as well, the same.
Before you break ground. So you wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you get the final permit for everything, and then you just do the construction work, and that's it. Here, Tesla's going completely different path, setting probably precedents in Germany. So what they've been doing is they've been giving only small chunks of the factory application process to the authorities to approve.
Right.
And actually the clerks in the offices, they like that because it's just small,
Right, so it's not a massive job they suddenly have to do.
And you have to work 3 years through these papers and with changes, which is very boring work. So they had just a small piece and they did a preliminary approval for that small piece, early on approval, which is a fully official approval. So yes, it's a first one, but for that piece of the factory, that's official. So that's done. So and Tesla was just giving another chunk and another chunk. So the authorities worked through that. Right. And then Tesla, because they change on the fly as a company, they're always the same as vehicles and the same as factories. So they come up with new ideas while they do stuff. And they change applications, it gives us back, and they get pretty quick also a response. But still, while the factory has been growing over time, the authorities are extremely nervous about the media and political pressure in Germany in terms of, well, this is a water protected area, there's a battery factory, they're supposed to build, and batteries are always dirty and all of that. So the authorities are, let's say, extra careful in making sure that everything they do is, foolproof, waterproof, bulletproof. So there can't be any problems. And I predict here, once the final permit is given, we're going to see a lot of court cases in Germany. Because, and we know this already today, because as a normal person like you and me, we can go in court and say, I oppose that. I don't like that because I don't believe that this is according to rules, blah, blah, blah. So this is going to happen. And the authorities trying to make sure that up front everything is so clean that this is going to be dismissed in court very quickly.
Right.
So that is a plan. Obviously, because of all the changes Tesla did, this has been new way of working for the authorities. We have now preliminary approval number 14 that went through, and these are all final approvals in small chunks. So to challenge later on what you earlier approved is very difficult. So therefore, people are always waiting for this big one final last approval. But this is just going to be like, here's number 15, and because we did the 14 before, everything is fine now, go ahead. So originally they wanted to start in, I think, Q2 it was, in Germany with production, or let's say with first steps in terms of ramping up. And then they've said for a long time, July, August. And that is for the final permit, and that's still set also from the minister. So they are still saying, early fall, latest, that the permit should be given. Elon Musk now said that he's looking for end of the year for production start and for volume production next year. But knowing such complex, large production sites, you need a long time to ramp this up. So you have to think about it like you have a chain of robots and only parts of that works and the other doesn't work. So it's not synchronized. And you try to get this somehow work together so that you have a flow. But there are interruptions all the time. And then you have buffer from half-finished material, and you have to buffer this somewhere, and you have to bring it back and forth. It's a lot of inefficiencies. So to bring it up takes time, and they will probably start, I believe, in autumn with first steps in terms of trying production, parts of it. And later in the year, if everything goes fine, they should be able to, to produce first vehicles, and then real mass production will definitely happen next year.
That's next year, Because what is I don't know what the capacity of the factory is. It's what it could produce if it was running at 100%.
So we are here in phase number 1. So there are going to be 3 phases.
Right.
Phase number 1 is 500,000 vehicles per year, and we talk about Model Y. So long term, the factory has a capacity of about 2 million vehicles per year. So that's long.
Because just to put that in context, because I have been around Wolfsburg, the Volkswagen's original plant. I don't know what that can produce a year. Do you have any, just as a comparison?
I think it's more than
it is
what
more
we
than
have in Wolfsburg right now. But you also have to look, how many people are involved there, how many hours you need to produce such a vehicle, which is actually one of the key indicators the German legacy autos are really concerned about, because right now Tesla already has less time involved in producing and finishing a vehicle compared to legacy auto, and this is determining costs. So that's another issue.
But 2 million a year, just is phenomenal. It's huge. So it gives us an idea of the scale of that factory, because I've only seen sort of aerial pictures. It's hard to really get a grip of just how big it is.
It will take years to go there. So the construction site will continue to be construction site, because they're going to expand that, and there are a lot of issues like water, supply and other things that needs to be solved over the years. But even in the first phase, 500,000 Model Y for Europe is massive. This is a huge amount, and this is going to be delivered to Europe, so they are not going to send them, I don't know where, to Asia or somewhere. It doesn't make any sense. So it's going to be massive. And another thing, and that's a rumor for the UK, and that there are all the time there's rumors coming up that sooner or later there will be an option to build a Gigafactory in the UK. And I'm not sure whether they do that, because the vehicles are pretty much mirrored inside. So if from the right and left, so it's pretty easy to make left-hand drive. So that's easy to put the driving wheel on the other side. A few other changes need to be done, but then you have what I'm trying to say here is I think you don't need a dedicated factory just for the countries like the UK, where on the wrong side of the road.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's enough Volkswagens, BMWs, Audis in this country, as in huge amounts, which are built to drive on the wrong side, as you suggest.
But going back to Berlin, and this is important. It's a pretty fast process right now. What is happening?
It has happened very quickly. I mean, that's because when they built the one in China, I know nothing about Chinese planning, but I imagine if the Chinese government wanted that factory, it would happen as quickly as it's physically possible to build it, and it did. That was extraordinary how quickly they went into production.
But answering your questions about bureaucracy and all the challenges. Yes, we have too many rules, too much regulation, and even the politicians in Germany agree to that. What Elon just said yesterday in a tweet again, and also in an interview, he said, it would be helpful to have less regulation, and there is no incentive in Germany to get rid of old regulations. There's a lot of stupid things out there which are just time consuming and doesn't help anybody. So there are no processes in place to make things leaner and faster. And I believe it would be good for Germany, not only for Tesla, but for everybody who is trying to build here something to accelerate these processes. I mean, there are very high standards in terms of environmental protection, in terms of citizens living around protection and a ton of other things, which are all the reason why Germany is as beautiful as it is. Because all of that regulation. So you come to holidays to Germany, it's so beautiful, it's like in the Middle Age and all of that, which is true in certain parts. But the reason for that is that we are highly regulated. You can't build a house like you want everywhere. I mean, that's just very difficult to go through that. And in some regions of Germany, if you build a house, they tell you how your house will look like.
How it will be, right,
So, it's true. I mean, it's not a joke. I think it could have been quicker, but I'm confident that they will manage the problems and challenges they have. The last ones, I don't see a major blocking point. So, if there's a delay of 3 months, who cares? I mean, in the long run, it doesn't matter.
No. And in terms of skilled workers, because that's the other thing, when it was initially announced that it was going to be in Berlin, because I think there was some chatter and speculation here. Elon Musk going to build a car factory in Devon or near Bristol. There was some talk of it being down near Bristol. And I just went, I don't think he will. To me, I kept it quiet about it because who's going to work there? If there's a lot of really skilled engineers in this country. Really, we should be proud of it. But they kind of work in luxury cars. So, the luxury car, Aston Martin, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, Jaguar, Land Rover, that's what we still make in this country, even if the companies are owned by the Chinese and the Indians, that's what we produce. Or Formula One cars. I mean, the most brilliant, I've been around many of the Formula One development places around Bedford, Milton Keynes. It's extraordinary. I mean, why do we build Formula One cars in this country? I'm sure the Germans would be much better at it, but we do. Anyway, but there is this enormous respected engineering class effectively in Germany. I mean, I was so aware of that in the time I've been in Germany, that if you're an engineer in Germany, you're looked at as in this country, if you're an engineer, you're thought of as a mechanic.
Okay.
That's what an engineer is, and people don't understand what engineers do. And I've been fighting this for the last 30 years. That argument. No, wait a minute. An engineer is not a mechanic. Not that there's anything wrong with mechanics; they're very important. But but whereas in Germany, that's a very different attitude. I'm talking a societal attitude to engineers. Yeah. So therefore, you build a big factory in Germany that needs a lot of engineers. That's good because there's a lot of engineers there. I mean, I'm assuming they're managing to hire people quite easily.
So I learned factory planning and when I was in university, and later on had touch points here and there about that. So if you try to find the right location for your factory, you have a long list of criteria to go through.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned one of those, which is important to have the right country where you have a good pool of engineers who you can use and you probably can hire, hopefully. And that's just one of
a long list, true.
Long list.
Yeah.
But when I heard about Tesla is looking for a factory in Europe. I made the math for myself. I always time came back to Germany as the right place.
Right.
Beside all the challenges and issues, and obviously it's a German engineer speaking here, so it's easy talking
Yes.
to me. But having a pool of good experienced engineers in the automotive industry is certainly one very important criteria. But there is also a huge supplier base in Germany and in Eastern Europe, which is extremely critical. So don't believe because of vertical integration, Tesla doesn't have suppliers. There are a lot of suppliers actually already today here in Germany supplying Tesla with parts for their cars.
Right.
And so that is very critical and important, having good, reliable suppliers so that the supply chain works well. Another criteria for Tesla has been, and this has been disclosed in meetings, has been the renewable energy supply. And Brandenburg is a country in Germany that has most of the wind renewable energy production.
Right. Ah, that's interesting.
That was a very important criteria for Tesla because they've said, hey, we want to go where we get renewable energies, and yes, we probably put solar panels on our roof, but that probably won't be enough. We want to have supply, and that was another criteria that came into play here. And there's been other reasons for that. There's been a lot of chatter about people just don't want to work for Tesla here in Germany, which is total nonsense. So that's not again. So there was a poll, a survey lately with graduates from university, graduates and non-graduates, actually a pretty broad survey. And Tesla just is the first time on their list and is already on number 5. In some areas like engineering, they're already on rank number 3. So rank number 5 overall, rank number 3 for engineering, and there are other definitions. So that was surprising for most because everybody thought they will never bypass Porsche or Audi and all of that. And by the way, also Germans are also in the top ranks. Interesting.
Yeah.
So what is that's telling to us that that's a new company. The FAT in Germany about Tesla is like they don't pay well, they don't treat their employees well. They're gonna burn you. I mean, you do this 2 years and you are leaving on all 4 out of the door because you've been working your ass off, and still all the graduates would really love working for Tesla. And that shows that there's no problem with attracting talent. And at the end of the day, this is so critical and underestimated. So forget everything Tesla has done and let's think about the future. And the same is true for VW and the others. If you don't have the right talent, you will never be able to design the future, your vehicles, your services as you need to. And the problem is, if you're an organization like VW with 660,000 people worldwide,
it's amazing.
You just can't fire them and hiring process. It doesn't work. But Tesla can because they start from scratch. This is a huge advantage because they can select the right people that fit to the culture, that have the right mindset. And even Elon Musk came lately to Germany just for this. Well, in autumn, in November, he just came to do interviews. I mean, with key people. He said there's 5 key people he wants to interview and check out whether that are the right ones. And I can tell from my own experience, if you have a founder and CEO who is selecting the people that made the company big, still selecting in this size, this is kind of almost a guarantee for success in the future. And that makes a big difference.
Because that one last thing I'd just love to ask you about, because that is, that there's no question, and I'm sure the German the established automotive industry are sort of looking at, I look at the pictures of the Gigafactory and going, oh my God, they built that fast. They're looking at pictures of the Gigafactory and going, oh God, they built that fast. This is scary, because whatever else happens, there's going to be people in Europe in general who could have bought a BMW or a Volkswagen or an Audi or a Mercedes, but they bought a Tesla. There's going to be quite a lot of those, and that means their sales are going to be affected by it. But the other place that I've become more and more aware of, and this is partly because we do so many shows with Elliot in Shanghai.
Yeah.
But the Shanghai Auto Show, when you see those cars now, there's a lot of them that wouldn't really work in a European or North American area. The very small city cars. But the fact that there are new companies without that legacy that have got set up, that have huge amounts of money behind them, that aren't making one car for a car show. They're already selling hundreds of thousands of cars for about 4,000 euros, 5,000 euros. It's that kind of price. And they are little two-seater city cars, admit that. But if you go for the ones that are around 10 or 12,000 euros, and you with over 200 miles range, you import those into Europe, which is starting to happen, and you double the price. You're looking at a 20,000 euro car that is as pretty much close as good as anything you can buy that's made in Europe or even Korea or North America. And you're going, that's got to be, because this is my big gripe with the cost of electric vehicles. I think you and I have talked about this before, but it's not 100% obvious. Oh, it's because the batteries are so expensive that they cost £10,000 more to buy a Volvo with an electric drive in comparison with a Volvo with a combustion engine. Why 10,000? Because that's literally the price difference in the UK. You buy the diesel Volvo, it's this much. If you buy the electric one, it's £10,000 more. Exactly the same car in every other respect.
So, first of all, I believe that Chinese vehicles coming to Europe, and that NIO is coming and others are coming, and they're going to deliver vehicles to Europe which are pretty nice. So I doubt that they're going to have a big problem to sell them. The appetite for good BEVs is high, and people just look around to find the right one.
Yeah.
So that will put the Germans and other automakers in Europe under heavy pressure because they have a huge organization they need to pay for. And that's a nice organization. That is stranded assets at the end of the day. So to make that transition from ICE to BEVs is an impossible task because how do you do that? I mean, there are a lot of people who you just don't need for the BEV future anymore. You fire all of them or what?
What do you do? Yeah.
You have all this infrastructure facility. You have all the commitments from the past in terms of pensions and all of that needs to be paid. So when you say the price difference is 10K, my answer to you is there is obviously a difference between the cost for producing a dedicated vehicle and the price you ask at the market later on. The difference is a profit. So they obviously try to reduce the production costs of the vehicles, but at the end of the day, they are pricing the vehicles in a way that they still can sell enough not to be able to be needed to pay the credit to Brussels because the CEO regulation is forcing them. So they try to be in a certain window in terms of BEV sales. Sounds a little bit odd, but the price tag you find on BEVs in Europe has not that much to do with the production costs of the cars now. It's a rather complex calculation in order to come up with the right profit mix. And if you look at Q1 from the German automakers, they all have fantastic profit. They make billions and billions of profit because they know how to play this game. They probably could have sold more BEVs, but it would have cost them money. So therefore, they tried not to do that. And some models, they just stopped producing or even offering in the order process. And there's a reason for that. And I doubt that the reason is just the supply issues. They have with semiconductors, which is one issue, or with batteries, which is another issue.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing in the future, and you just said that, when the Chinese and Asian vehicles come to market here more than today, people will realize these are good BEVs. And right now, we are all leaving the ICE world. And if you enter the BEV world, it's a new experience.
Yeah.
So the German automakers are betting that the brand loyalty will make them buy a BEV with the same brand in the future. And,
Yeah.
and you just said it. I mean, lately I met a BMW manager at a charging, and we discussed. He was sitting in the iX3, actually,
Right.
the new one, and we chatted about the car and this and that. And then he said, we are pretty concerned because we realized that a lot of BMW customers are going to Tesla,
Yeah.
and they won't come back because we know, we talk to them, and they are not
Yes.
to come back. So
Yeah.
the loyalty to a brand like Tesla is extremely high, and the same is obviously true for Audi or all the others. So what I'm trying to say here is there's a lot of problems in the future. I don't see them making the shift as they need to. I'm not as positive as most people. I believe the only one who is doing the right step is right now the VW group, but they have a lot of problems in front of them, and the technology is not ready at all. And they just don't have the time. So waiting 5 or more years is a problem. And the two of us didn't even talk about autonomous driving. Let's assume next year, more than a million Tesla vehicles will be capable to be used autonomously to a certain extent on certain places. Why should young people buy a car? There's no reason for that. You get for pennies, you can drive from A to B. It's very cheap. And I'm going to rent out my car if it would be possible to do that in Europe. I would give it as a robotaxi. I have no problem with it.
Right.
Right. I believe a lot of people.
That's a thing I hadn't thought about before. If your car is genuinely capable of fairly extensive autonomous driving, and you don't need it, someone else can go in it because they're just getting a lift. They're not driving the car. I hadn't thought of that.
Right.
Oh my God.
And you even have a camera. You can see the person in your
see what they're doing. Yeah.
It's not making something weird, and you have a recording. And VW has understood that. So autonomous driving is going to change the industry much more than people.
Oh yeah.
And I believe a lot of people just will abandon having their own car in the future.
Why would you bother? I mean, I mean, I think this is the real critical thing, and we must stop now because it's like we could go on all day. But let's do another podcast where we just talk about autonomous cars. But the sustainability of the energy transition is not going to be facilitated by everyone who now privately owns a car in Europe just having an electric one instead, because that means like in this country we'll have 32 million electric cars. We don't use them. They're sitting around all the time doing nothing. Let's have 10 million electric cars that we use all the time and that we use for grid backup, and that instead of used for 10% of their functioning lives are used for 70, 80%. So, then from a sustainability point of view, that is a very strong argument. How you do that is
this is going to happen once this technology is available, and people argue it's not going to be available soon, and I argue it's going to be available sooner than you believe. So we have to distinguish in between driving assist systems and let's call it level 4 autonomous driving, although those levels only talk about liability and not about the technology capability of a vehicle, which is a myth. I mean, this is just people believe like a level 2 car can do only level 2. It's not true. It's about liability and responsibilities at the end of the day. And you're right. I mean, maybe we should do another podcast just about that, because this is a critical, very, very important area, because first of all, people are completely confused what is available and what works right now, and they just don't understand how fast this is changing and why. And as you said, once that is happening, and it's only a question of time when it's happening, not if. So when that is happening, it's going to change transportation in that areas completely. Because you're going to have at that point in time millions of vehicles already on the road capable, not necessarily having the subscription, but instead of Tesla. And we see similar approaches from other automakers going that direction.
Right. So they're building the technology into the car, even if you're not able to use it now, but it is there. It can be switched on, basically.
Because this is one of the biggest profit and margin levers in the future. If you have a over-the-air update with certain functionality in your car, you pay a monthly or one-time subscription for. You have sold the car years before. This is the holy grail, because we talk here about 90, 95, 98% margin on that software sale.
Yes.
This is incredible.
Right.
This is fantastic money. This is software industry. I worked 20 years in the software industry. So it is just mind blowing and a game changer. And legacy auto, with building the chassis and the battery and all of that, won't be able to compete against the ones who are pushing out the software updates and selling them successfully. So big game changer. Yeah.
Alex, thank you so much, because it has been, I'm going to be in touch very soon. we have to talk for an hour and 7 minutes about autonomous vehicles, but it's just wonderful to talk to you, because your understanding and knowledge and experience in this field is so valuable.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here and chatting with you. Always enjoy your show, and happy to do a next one. Let's.
Very good.
Yeah, great.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I really did enjoy that. I'm definitely going to get Alex back on as soon as I can. He's going to go on holiday on his Baltic coast house with really bad broadband, so I'm not going to try and do it while he's there. But we'll get him back on soon. We've got some other very interesting German engineers and scientists coming on the show soon, who might have a slightly different attitude to the future of hydrogen. Who knows? That's all, though. Please do tell your friends about the Fully Charged Plus podcast. And as always, if you have been, thank you for listening.